Let's start dimensioning problem 10-2. Just a reminder, these are completely two separate objects. This is not a front view of this, and this is not a right side view of that. All right, this is going to be an exercise, and this is going to be an exercise. So let's take a look at this left object. Remember to refer to your dimensioning guide with those three simple steps. Give your overall dimensions, identify the location of certain features, and then identify the size dimensions. So I'm going to go ahead and just start with a brainstorm of what we're going to be, what's going to be needed for this dimensioned object. So we know that we're going to need the overall size. So I'm going to start with the width and extend off of this and say I'm going to need that dimension here. The overall height I'm going to put on this side. All right, I don't need to measure it yet. I'm just going to throw in the actual dimension lines, and I'll just call this width and height for now. This is just a brainstorm. Now that I have my overall, I'm just going to work my way left to right to figure out what all I need. So I'm going to need that width. Looking down, I'm also going to need this angle, so I'm going to extend up. I'm going to need the other side of this notch. I'm going to need this part of the notch. And then I already have my overall. So that is it for the widths. Now I'm going to work my way from the bottom to the top and try to figure out what height dimensions I'm going to need. I need this first dimension here. Looking up, I also have the angle, so I'm going to need this. I'm going to need the height of this notch, so extend off. I'm going to need the size or the depth of this notch. And then I have the overall height. So that one is basically done. So this brainstorm shows me I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different height dimensions, and I'm going to need 5 width dimensions. Now I could change where I actually position these. If I want to put the height of the angle right next to the angle, that would be fine, and it would also leave me a little bit of room as I put in these other dimensions. Now that I have that, I'll put this up here, and I'm going to start my actual drawing. So I know that I'm going to go ahead and move the angle to this side. So I need, without that one there, 1, 2, 3, 4 height dimension. So I'm going to extend off of the bottom edge. And remember that when you start the extension, you need a slight gap, a 16th to be precise. I'm going ahead and just going to extend far off apart. Then I'm going to go out and put the overall height extension off the top as well, because I know all of the heights are going to exist right here. I said I need 4 of those, so I'm going to go ahead and mark out the distance of those dimensions from my object. I know the first dimension is going to be 3/8 away from the object. Remember that barrier around here, I call it like a force shield. You don't want anything within 3/8 of your part. So 1, 2, 3. That's where my first dimension is going to be. Then I know I have 3 more after that. So the second dimension from your part, the first one's 3/8. The next consecutive dimension is 1/4. So I'm going to measure 1/4 from that one. I'm going to go ahead and mark another 1/4, and then another 1/4 inch from that. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different marks right along my extension, and then everything else on this extension I'll erase, but I'm just going to leave that there for now. From here, I can go ahead. I'm going to refer to these little tick marks I have. I'm going to extend off of this first part because this is going to be my first dimension. I'm going to move up. I don't need the angle because I'm going to be putting it on the left-hand side. Now I need this dimension. Leave that 16th inch gap from your object, and I'm going to extend right above that tick mark. So you can overdraw the extension because you can erase later. Then it's going to be the depth of this notch. So I'm going to extend from that notch. My little 16th inch gap is going to be from the bottom of that. I'm going to extend over. And then the top, which I already have. So from here, I can start to place, these are the extension lines, I'm going to start to place the dimension lines. Those are those lines with the arrows. I'm going to leave a little gap for my number, so one part of the line, second part of the line. Then I'm going to come over to the next dimension. I'm going to extend up. I'm going to offset where those numbers are so I can read this easily. So I'm going to put my gap somewhere right here, because that's where the number will sit. The number will sit on the first one right there. The next one. Now if you extended this extension too far, now's a good time to erase it, because it's harder to erase a line if it's intersecting another line. I'm going to leave my gap for this number above that one so it's not too cluttered. And coming over to the next one, I'll put the gap at the top. Alright, so now, before I get any further, I'm going to put my arrowheads in last, but I'm going to shorten my extension lines. So what I first did was, I erased the end of the extension, because it should only sit past this last dimension, 1/8 of an inch. Then these are the same way. I have a little bit of an issue right here. I'll fix now. Before I put my numbers and arrowheads in, I'm going to go ahead and start to lay out the top or the width dimensions. So that first extension line, I'll just extend up beyond my part. Make sure your T-square is flush against your board. And I'm going to extend up. I know I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 dimensions at the top, and I'll put the angle ordinate dimension at the bottom. So I'm going to go and put the overalls in first. Then I'm going to go and measure out the distance for my dimensions from the part. I have 4 of those, so I'm going to mark out the first one 3/8 away from my part. 1, 2, 3, and then 1/4 for every consecutive dimension. 1, 2, 3. The other reason I'm doing the angle down here is because I'm running out of room. You are going to face this as you get into more complex drawings that have a lot of dimensions. So the first dimension is going to be to this side, so I'm going to extend up. And I can see where that little tick mark is, so I'm going to end right there. Some of this is taking a visual guess, or you could project it over. Next one. Then I'm going to reference this notch. So I'm going to come up off the notch 1/16, draw the extension through the part, you can leave a little gap at the edge, and then extend up to where that's going to be referenced. Now I'm going to place my dimension lines. Space for the numbers. I'm going to shorten that extension a little bit now. Next dimension. And I'm offsetting the space so it's easier to read. And you can see how far this extension comes up. That's definitely going to get in my way, so I'm going to shorten it now. And then the overall dimension. Doesn't look like my left extension is quite long enough. I'm going to fix that now. Alright, so now I'm ready for the numbers and the arrows for both of these sets, but first I want to put my angle dimension in. So I could give a ordinate dimension where I locate how far from the right side this is, and how far from the top this corner is. However, I'm going to do an ordinate in combination with an angle dimension, so you can see how that looks. First I'm going to extend off the one side, leave a 1/16 inch gap, extend straight down. Then I'm going to extend off the angle in a very similar way. 1/16 inch from the actual angle, and then this extension should come 3/8 away from my part. And using my compass, I'm going to use this to create my dimension line. So this should be 3/8 away from the part as I start. I can measure that out now. So along this edge, 1, 2, 3, That's where my compass radius should be set. So I'm going to put my center point on the other side of the angle. Put the graphite end on that 3/8 inch mark. Draw part of my dimension line, and then it's going to come over here, leave a space for the actual angle. It doesn't look like I drew my extension line long enough. So that's where my angle is going to sit. However, I also need, this is not enough information because I know the angle, but I have no idea where to place that angle. So if I were to cut this out of a block of material, I would know, okay, well, I'm going to set my cutting tool to the angle, but I don't know where to actually place the part in reference to that blade. So I need a dimension either from this side over or from the top down. I'm going to go ahead and just do the top down. So I'm going to extend this corner off 3/8. This side off 3/8. And draw my dimension lines. I'm just going to center the space for the actual number. Alright, so now that all my line work is done, I need to place the arrowheads and the numbers. So I actually need to take these measurements. This is 0.75. Make sure your graphite holder is nice and sharp or else it won't fit through these numbers. And you also want to make sure this lettering stencil is horizontal. So by placing your T-square below it, you also ensure that your numbers are aligned with each other. The next dimension, so remember I'm using baseline dimensioning, so it's not the size of this notch that I'm measuring, it's from the left hand side. So that is 1.5. Let's go ahead and do the vertical dimensions and the angle. One quick reminder, you should never be turning this to write your numbers because that would be unidirectional. We are doing aligned dimensioning, so all the numbers and the text should be horizontally aligned. Once you have your numbers in, the last thing to do is add your arrows. So I recommend using the A in your lettering stencil to get a consistent look. Technically the arrows should be 3 times longer than they are wide, but this will work fairly well. So I like to do all the arrows in the same direction first. So all the ones pointing up, I'm going to come through, work my way left to right so I don't forget any. Make sure the tip of the arrow is just touching the extension line. It should not go past, and it should not be below, but just touching it. And now I'm going to work my way on my downward arrows. And lastly, the angle. You need to have a degree symbol. My leader is actually touching my degree, so I want to get rid of some of that. So there's a space. It's all about making it easy to read. And I need to put the arrows facing the extensions off of those angled dimension lines. And there you have it. This is fully dimensioned. Before you move on, go left to right, bottom to top, and make sure you didn't forget any of those dimensions. If you did, you may have to move some of those dimensions out to make room for them to properly fit them in. If it's something on this side that you forgot, you can conveniently put that dimension on this left-hand side of your object. But if it was this 2.5, I did forget my decimal, so it's a good thing I'm looking this over, and I forgot this decimal at 0.75, that would be wrong because it's not 75 inches, it's 0.75. So look for those decimals that you might be missing, look for the arrows, look for the degree symbol, look for the extensions, erase any overextensions. If I have an extension that's way out here, I need to erase that so it's only sticking past my last dimension, 1/8 of an inch. So look it all over, make sure you didn't forget anything, and good luck.